Hello friends, welcome back to yet another new episode of BE Roundup. ET Brand Equity is that show where we analyze the latest developments of the week in the advertising and marketing industry. And to help us do that, this week we have Mr. Saurabh Uboweja from Brands of Desire. So welcome Saurabh, and thank you so much for being a part of this show.
Hi Satyajit, thank you so much for inviting me.
So the major development in this week, and kind of half of the industry is in France nowadays, yes. Right? The Cannes Lions, the Oscars of advertising, and India is really doing well. This year started with a very good note because Piyush Pandey, the Pandey brothers have been felicitated with lifetime awards. And then India has managed to cobble up a Grand Prix as well. Yes. It is kind of understood that India will end up with a bigger tally of medals. Sure. So, there are two questions. One, any trend that you see standing out this year? It might be, from the Indian agencies as well as or the international agencies that you have observed. And secondly, what's your thought about, this year's tally numbers or, how India's performance would be?
Sure. I think great question, Satyajit. Yeah. Generally speaking, I think the Indian creative industries have really shone bright on the international stage year on year now. Right. And I think it's not a new phenomena anymore. It's been there for at least a decade of high performance, and I would say a couple of decades of preparing for this high performance on the international stage. Right. Our content always has been very creative, given the high level of intellectual capital that exists in our country to create fantastic stuff. What we have now learned to master is how to package and present it in a way that it becomes maybe international worthy in terms of consumption. Right. And in that sense, I think we've come a long way. The Indian creative industries are now becoming innovative as well. Mm-hmm. And it's not just left to communication or, just presenting something in a creative or a fun way, but actually solving problems with your innovation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where there's been a lateral shift, if I may say, in approach to creativity.
Right. So, you spoke about you touched upon the campaign, right? And my next question is on that, right? What is so special about this, Blink to Speak campaign, which got the award, which got the Grand Prix?
Yeah, I think in general, if you look at how Cannes has proceeded over the last couple of years, the jury has paid maybe a little bit more attention to stuff which is maybe problem solving in nature, or maybe connects to people's health in general. I see health being a very dominant theme over the last couple of years, this year as well. Given that somewhere when people who are well-to-do, very successful in life, come together, sit on a resort city, you don't want to be talking about the vanity stuff. You want to be talking about stuff which is you are already in the middle of that vanity, so you want to think and talk and share stuff which is probably more value adding to the world. And in that sense, I think the campaign fits really well. Is this scalable? Can this be a solution which can be extended to multiple formats, maybe take it more digital as well in some way, make it more available to the world? I think that's when the solution would be truly in a space where we can say that they've done something extraordinary.
What, according to you, should be the next step of this campaign?
You see, what happens is that once you win the award, there's this huge sense of comfort that you fall into and say that we've achieved and accomplished what we set out to achieve. But I think as far as the non-profit organization which is behind the campaign is concerned, plus TBWA, not quite sure how inspired or motivated they would be, or would they even have the funds to take it to the kind of scale that it deserves. So the challenge is implementation on the ground. Building a few stories is certainly exciting. You can maybe have a couple of good pilot cases happening here and there. Right. But to take it mainstream, implement it, probably garner government support, maybe even United Nations becoming a part of it. Right. Because this is something, if it is implemented well, and can be scientifically proven to be effective,
Right.
because maybe the scientific efficacy is still not proven.
Right.
It's still creative efficacy to some extent.
Right.
Then I think it has a huge future. And probably I would say that the next step is to research more and actually allowing people to communicate
Right.
using a very, very unconventional but very obvious channel. In that sense, it's incredible.
Right.
But how do you take it forward to the next level is a lot of deep investments, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So staying on Cannes, right? And you have been you have been representing India in a lot of international conferences, and Davos is one of them that we just discussed, right? It brings me back to your first point where you see that Indian representation has really come of age.
Yes.
Right. What's your assessment, like from an overall branding and advertising kind of a market?
Yeah, so I've always maintained this line that India as a nation has been a net consumer of brands and not a net creator of brands, because if you actually start counting, you will find that other than the large multinationals which are operating in India, where a lot of great effort goes in brand building,
Right.
but these brands again belong to international owners. It's not something which is actually conceptualized and created in our country. And even today you can actually count on fingertips, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 brands which have got originated, thought out, conceptualized in India, and then they've gone out. There is a reason for that, Satyajit, and it's not something which is just by chance or maybe we didn't pay attention or something of that kind. I think somewhere people tend to think that building a brand can be driven by either by being creative or maybe by using some very effective marketing mediums. And I don't think we are bad at that. But still we are not building the brands, right?
Right.
So there must be something wrong in the way we actually engineer them. There must be a science which we've probably not paid sufficient attention to.
Right.
And I think that's one area where we work extensively, because what we realize is that if brand building was so easy as vanity and creating a few great campaigns and sharing those campaigns with the rest of the world, then India by now would have been a brand. Yeah. So, but here we are in an absolutely chaotic environment where people pay a premium for as simple a thing as a quality product, right? Which is a given in many countries around the world.
Yeah.
People expect quality to be a hygiene, not something which is special. You see, in such a scenario, it obviously takes a lot of time for any Indian organization, be it a creative organization or maybe even a product designer or a developer, to build their credibility on the international stage.
This reminds me of a foreigner friend of mine who just in a conversation once we were having, he mentioned that why is that from India there is not a known global brand as yet. Maybe Tata is one, but not beyond that.
Tata is not global yet.
Yeah.
Also.
Exactly, right. So, and I was pondering on this, like what's the maybe the product is already there.
Yeah.
Maybe the branding needs to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, so moving on, Saurabh. This week has seen a major controversy erupt, right? This is this is about Airtel,
Yes.
and the tweet that somebody called Pooja Singh did. She wanted a Hindu attendant to be at a service, and Airtel abided by that, right?
Yeah.
And the result we saw, right? People were like tweeting to other competition brands and for porting their numbers. This was something that reflected bad on Airtel. My question is again twofold. One is, what can Airtel do now?
Yeah.
I mean, looking at things that have already done, it's already done, right?
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
how to undo the damage,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And secondly, business wise, right?
Yeah.
It's obviously it reflects badly on Airtel for sure as a brand image, but business wise, how not to let that damage been done?
Sure. Well, I think these are good questions to ponder over, Satyajit. I wish there were absolute answers, but I'd like to respond from my perspective. One, I feel it would do a whole lot of benefit to Airtel if they did not treat it as an image management problem.
Okay.
The problem is they're still looking at it like a reputation crisis or a crisis
Right.
management issue,
Right.
right? Whereas the real exposure for them is on the lack of sensitivity in managing customer relations.
Here, I mean, do you say it is not crisis? it is crisis, right? I mean,
It is crisis, but then crisis you can manage. But how do you manage a systematic problem, right? The bigger problem.
All right. So you're talking about the bigger picture here.
The bigger picture here is that in the Indian context, there is, I can't think of even one brand, maybe just one or two which come close, who really know how to manage a customer experience or a customer service desk,
Right.
with emotions, not like a robot, right? Today we are talking about robotics or artificial intelligence taking away human jobs,
Right.
but look at the irony, we've got human beings behaving like robots. If AI can do a better human job than humans themselves can,
Right.
I think then AI is better.
Right.
And this is just one exposure of how the customer service system in India looks like. And it's not just Airtel. I don't want to take a dig at them. I think everybody who is into consumer services is facing this challenge. The same issue also happens when I have a problem with my connection and then I call up Airtel.
Right.
The same lack of sensitivity. Maybe this is more like a national crisis right now. But the lack of sensitivity is a problem which is very specific to the organization.
Right.
I think in that sense, I wish while they manage the crisis, which I think they would have some amazing PR managers to take care of,
Right.
they would do a lot well to actually rework on how they want to redesign this part of the customer experience.
Right.
And I think that's where the real work is required, the hard work required, where you actually create equity. I think people expect brands to be more human in that sense,
Exactly.
right? I don't think anybody says that just be perfect in every situation. Yeah, but when you're not perfect, have the audacity to admit that you were not perfect, and you made a mistake, and you would like to rework on how this should not happen again.
Exactly.
I think that's a lost opportunity. When you're already being discussed, you're in constant buzz, you want to use this opportunity to win a few people, then worry about losing a few. In that sense, I think Airtel lost the opportunity in this case. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So while staying on advertising and marketing, right? This week also saw a report, from an agency come out where we saw that there will be a jump in the Adex, right, to X amount, and by January we will see a better market. So again, two questions on this. We have seen the market not performing very well last year, for obvious reasons, right? Has the market really bettered itself now? That's one. And secondly, the contributors to this Adex growth, right? How have they changed over the years? And this year particularly, how do you see the contributors?
I think both questions are related and quite interesting.
Great.
I'll address the first one first. So, I think as a nation, we have been becoming a consuming nation. We used to be great savers. We used to, every time we earned money, we put it back in the bank. Today we want to spend. So everybody has credit cards. Spending money is becoming easier. There are a lot more things to buy. A lot more exciting stuff out there in the market. E-commerce is constantly on your head, right? So there are all these new contributors to spending, right? The moment you see consumer spend increasing at a very, very high pace, the advertising spend just corresponds to it.
Right.
So this growth is not new. It has been happening for the last decade. As a nation, we are still not a very mature consumption economy. We still don't have as many options of products or brand for every product category in the supermarket. For example, for any category, let's say even if it's a milk-based product, I go to the supermarket, at best I may have 2 or 3 options, right? If I go to Europe or let's say in the US, I go to a top supermarket, for that same product variation, I may actually have more than a dozen options. So in that sense, we're still not a consumption society, but we're growing fast. Yeah. Now, as we're growing fast, the Adex has to increase with it. There are more people who are aspirational of building brands. There are more people who want to spend more money to reach out to new set of consumers who are willing to spend money, and in all parts of the economy, not just the urban parts of the economy. In that sense, I think we are growing more than, 2.5 times than developed markets would as far as Adex is concerned. I think we are at about 10-11% year-on-year growth. Small incidents like a GST realignment or a demonetization may kind of pause you for a while, but they won't really stop the growth momentum. I think the major change that is happening is, like you very rightly said, while the Adex is increasing year on year at almost 10%, the GDP is growing at above 7%. The people who influence the Adex are actually changing year on year. So while you had maybe the creative guys, the creative agencies who were the big influencers of Adex, maybe a couple of years back. Today, a lot of that is getting automated. So there is a lot of ad tech which is involved. Clients are becoming increasingly intelligent on how they want to spend on media. They have a lot more data to make those decisions. So there's a lot of conscious decision making happening at the moment, led by technology. Besides that, there are companies who are specializing in certain mandates, and the key influencers are no longer the big ad agencies.
Right.
You know, and this is where I think there is just so much merging of ideas and things happening. You've got professional services enterprises, maybe traditionally management consultants or traditionally IT companies, and suddenly they are acquiring ad agencies. They are acquiring digital capabilities. Or for them, it's just creative capability. They're not even actually acquiring an ad agency per se. They're just acquiring talent. And in that sense, people's roles are changing. The CMO's role is changing.
Exactly.
You know, and I would say companies and agencies and the environment would either have to evolve with that change, or they may be left out in the open.
Right.
You know, and really not become part of the market the way they would really like to. Yeah.
So as you rightly said, right, you know, the influences are changing and the market is per se is changing its behavior. So how is BOD changing with this?
Sure. I mean, that's interesting. So yeah. So Satyajit, we've been in this now for over 10 years. You know, we started as a strategy-led brand consultancy. Strategy was still an anchor for our work. It continues to be a core competency. But we realized that it was very easy for us to again get tagged into the agency space where we were not doing so much of agency work. While we invested heavily into design capabilities, content capabilities, but strategy was still a competency framework for us. We felt that over these years, we have actually been solving business problems for clients. You know, we've kind of built capabilities where we can look at the big picture. And part of the solution, when we solve a case, part of the solution can be a creative solution. But there are so many other angles to the implementation. At the end of the day, our goal is to build brand assets in the balance sheet. This is not a P&L game.
Right.
You know, while you are increasing the business growth, profits may be increasing, but at the same time you have to balance it with creation of real assets in the balance sheet, the intellectual property that we're talking about. There's very little science, unfortunately, on that subject, you know, and it's a very, very new industry. So we felt that we should also transform with the time and not get stuck up in the traditional route.
Right.
Which is where over the years, actually we have evolved into becoming more like a management consulting firm, but which is focused on building brands. We are introducing new principles in brand building where we are saying that we'll talk about marketing, but probably the last subject. Let's start first with an internal cultural reorientation. Let's start with setting a totally new vision for the organization. Let's figure out what we want to really do in the next couple of years. How do we position ourselves, not from a marketing point of view, but from an organization, from a business point of view.
So practicing what you preach.
Exactly, you know, and in that sense, I think the market still need to evolve a lot. We've made conscious steps towards that. We've always been more business oriented, but at the same time, building capabilities in totally new set of areas. Design and content and strategy have been our traditional capabilities, but capabilities around project management. I think India as a nation is a lousy project manager. We get huge budgets to invest into massive infrastructure at times, but how efficiently do we utilize those budgets to finish a project on quality, on time? I think we're building capabilities in those areas and not just maybe things which everybody else is also working on, things like data analytics or data science or digital tech per se. So in that sense, I think we have a long way to go, but we know at least which way we are directed.
Great, Saurabh. I think, this has been a very, fruitful chat. It is always, a pleasure to talk with you, and, I'll wait for, further developments from BOD.
Thank you so much, Satyajit. The honor is absolutely mine. It's always a pleasure interacting with you and having a free-flowing chat like we did right now. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you to have you. Thanks. Well, viewers, with this, we come to an end of today's episode. Tell us how did you like it? Comment, share this video, and until next time, stay tuned to AT Branding.